Elizabeth Warren, kind of a darling of the left, who helped create this Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in Washington, running against Scott Brown, who, of course, got the seat in a special election when Ted Kennedy passed away. Now, what's come up lately is Ms. Warren, Harvard Law School professor, at various times in her career has been identified as a Native American. And looking at her, it doesn't necessarily seem plausible.
No, I mean, you look at her and she's as white as a ghost of a polar bear after a dental bleaching in a snowstorm. But she was listed in various law school faculty directories in the 1980s and 90s as a, quote, Native American, American Indian law professor. She seems to have dropped that designation about the time she came to Harvard in the mid-90s. In 1996, the Harvard Crimson, the student newspaper, quoted a Harvard Law School spokesman as saying there was a big to-do over diversity or lack of diversity in the law school. He says, well, it's not true that we don't have any female minority law professors. Look at Elizabeth Warren. She's a Native American.
That's right. So they've been, or at various times, she's been identified as such.
Right.
Now, there has been lately now a hunt for evidence. At first, it appeared to be completely baseless, but now we get word that some generations back, there apparently was a Native American ancestor.
A genealogist who said that he couldn't find any evidence, he told the Boston Herald, which has been really in the lead on this story.
Yeah.
He told them that he couldn't find any Indian ancestors. Now he says he's found I guess it's a great-great-great-grandmother. So she's 132nd American Indian, if this is true. Now, of course, there's nothing wrong with being part American Indian. We celebrate the diversity of America. But if she used this to get advantages in her career, earlier in her career, and of course this sort of so-called diversity is quite beneficial for advancing in academia, and then turned around and dropped this designation to avoid the stigma of being an affirmative action hire, this looks really bad.
Well, speaking of talking about political impact now, and I think we've got a graphic, latest Rasmussen poll. This is a very tight race. It was expected to be tight, and it's both sides raising a lot of money. I'm wondering about the political impact here because, as you've said, this is not necessarily going to be welcomed by voters if there's a perception that she used this to advance her career, dropped it after she had already become a Harvard law professor.
Now, we should say her campaign has been putting out denials, including a statement from one Jay Westbrook of the University of Texas, where she once worked. He says, quote, "To suggest that she needed some special advantage to be hired here or anywhere is just silly. She was hired for her great abilities as a teacher and scholar. Her family tree had nothing to do with it." I tend to discount this denial. If you can find me an example of a college administrator admitting that somebody was hired because of his family tree and not for his great abilities, I will take this more seriously. But I think this is the sort of fiction that goes along with affirmative action in general. It's part of why the whole thing is so corrupt. As for the political implications. Look, Massachusetts has a lot of Irish and Italian people who may have voted for Ted Kennedy, but who don't benefit from racial preferences and may not like seeing this sort of thing. And there's also a class issue here. There was a case some years ago in which a couple of Irish-American firemen claimed, based on very similar claims of family lore and photographs of their ancestors, that they were part black. They were actually fired for racial fraud under Boston civil service laws. An elite lawyer shouldn't be able to get away with this sort of thing if an ordinary working stiff can't.
Well, I do wonder what the reaction is going to be. You now have the Boston Herald quoting a leader of a Native American group essentially saying, wait a minute, Elizabeth Warren is not a real Native American. That job could have gone to someone, I suppose, with more obvious lineage.
Right. I mean, look, the idea that being a Native American, that some percentage of Native American blood qualifies you for a job as a law professor is kind of weird in the first place. But that's where we've come with Justice O'Connor and the whole diversity rationale for racial preferences, which, by the way, may be on the verge of falling in the next Supreme Court term, because ironically the court is hearing a case involving the University of Texas where Professor Warren used to work. So what goes around comes around.